card number 14 in the Tarot Major Arcana, we have Temperance, and today's first version from the Lady Frida Harris Aleister Crowley Thoth deck is been retitled as Art, which is cool. It's yeah, it adds a nice dimension to the concepts of temperance, which traditionally can be seen as aspects of blending, tempering, modifying to create balance within self, or in the process of many alchemists talked about the great work. And this card very much shows an alchemical process of mixing substances in a chalice, creating wholeness within self, balancing opposites, all these sorts of concepts. The fact it gets renamed Art, I like it, but it brings a sense of playfulness to perhaps a card that may be seen as serious. And it doesn't always have to be. The process of art can be quite fun, can be quite playful, can be breaking away from rigid ideas of how things should be, and a part of it is an experimentation. So within creation, there's elements of experimentation. How things react together, how things balance out, what things go with other things, how to make the best out of a variety of different things to create new things from. And that is is definitely a component of temperance. Not just the, let's say, more traditional interpretations that may be about moderation, not overdoing things, not overindulging in certain facets of self or behaviours. Which we'll talk about aspects of those maybe in some of the other cards. This next one's from the Cosmic Tarot, and quite true to traditional representations where there are two chalices, they're sort of mixing or pouring, oftentimes in front of the figure, by generally, more often than not, a feminine type figure. One thing I really like in this particular portrayal, which varies from the original, is rather than the contents being poured in front of the figure, they're being poured down below, almost slightly more reminiscent of, say, components of the star, where the water bearer Aquarian pours liquid down. I like to see this representation, as talking about temperance of self in the sense of coming to a sense of fullness or completeness within self, represented or hinted at with the sun symbolism on the left of the card. And when that process is done and one is adequately happy with that, it then can sometimes pose the question of, how do I then kind of pour myself into the collective consciousness or the world around me, all beings? And a lot of times that involves a malleability or a discernment of representation of self characteristics. an awareness of that, not being too much one thing, being enough of one thing, not too little of one thing, which is another part of temperance, being able to modify oneself or adjust oneself in its components and constituencies and parts to be able to be of service and functionality in a wider sense. So as much as things are about being true to oneself or figuring oneself out, there are elements to how then one works with that in the collective sense, and I think that's quite nicely expressed in this card through its art. Now moving on to a very fantastic representation of Temperance from the Shadowscapes Tarot. Like in that last card, we saw water and we saw fire, or the sun. And in this card, we have this beautiful blending of both of those sort of energies into this yin-yang like orb. So again, Temperance reiterating the themes about contrasting things, but that can potentially work in harmony. And I really like this melding and colourings and depictions, and it makes me reminisce on the concepts of baptisms talked about, and the two baptisms, one being of water and one being of fire. Different things, but complementary, and being able to work in ways with things around us that may be sometimes at times seeming contradictory or non-blendable would be one way, but we understand hot and cold are just scales of temperature, and they are connected. We sort to understand then how we apply things on a scale and understand measure. In Temperance, again, a lot about measurement. A big stack of cards up here. This lovely one's from the Everyday Witch, and lovely pose, sort of advanced tree pose, one-legged. Echoed in the background, you'll see one side with treats, or I think there's a martini, some cupcakes, and on the other side, vegetables, water, and a book. Yeah. Temperance isn't necessarily about denying oneself the temptations of things that we may enjoy, but balancing between having things we knowingly know are good and we should be doing for ourselves, and the things we really want to do, which we also know we enjoy and get satisfaction from, but perhaps could be things that if we overindulge in can lead to trouble down the line. And now to this portrayal of Temperance as Alice deciding which piece of mushroom to eat. This is from a Tarot of Wonderland. Again, this kind of talks about the ability to modify self, to be in control of modifying oneself. In the story, she nibbles on one side, the mushroom makes her grow bigger, one side makes her go smaller. The interesting thing about her nibblings, or what leads her on the path of experimentation of these things, is desire. It's her incurious desire to see inside a house. And so she has to go through this process of experimenting and figuring out how things work to be able to get herself to the right size, to get to the things she desires. So again, that's like Temperance exploring the concepts of, are we so fixed in self that we're missing out on things that we may wish? Where in ways are we able to moderate, adjust, experiment, try on different selves or different sizes or different expressions of self or energy to be able to willingly and consciously work towards manifesting our desires, whatever shapes and forms they may come in? And I really, really think this is a wonderful representation of temperance. Sort of flowing on with similar themes to this is a quite unusual temperance. This one is from the Hush Tarot, one of the ones I have referenced quite a lot and chosen cards from, because they had some really interesting things. This particular one talks about the ability to see things from other people's perspectives, alluded to with this figure holding the mask and the bird. I quite like it. It's adding an element to temperance where you can step back from over personalization, over self-involvement in seeing things, to be able to see a wider picture, multiple perspectives, different beings, different creatures' perspectives of things. So there's a form of mastery of self within this particular figure, or this concept of temperance expressed, which I think is exceptionally valuable. Moving on to one I haven't featured a card from for a while. This is the Valentina Tarot. Quite a traditional depiction. Oftentimes you'll see the figure in temperance will have wings, will be quite angelic-like, or implications towards. This is quite a sultry one. The Valentina Tarot is a tarot deck that specifically has art and has been designed to deal with themes of relationship and amorous sexual relationships. Really, really interesting deck. This card in particular talks about kindness and generosity as an aspect of temperance. The figure is holding cups here, and one is raised as if to self, meaning this is full, this is mine. And the other is kind of a mug. It's like, and quite different, a chalice and a mug, a masculine and a feminine. Again, elements of temperance or balance. Blending of opposites. But it's the ability to extend a kindness towards another as an aspect of temperance. To be able to, again, like in the Hush Tarot, see outside of self and self-need to see others and to work with that. Again, an aspect of temperance could be seen or balancing as self and other, and finding one's appropriate ways and abilities one can then offer of what one has as a kindness, as a generosity towards other people. And I quite like that one as well. This one is, I think, the Wildwood Tarot. And quite a different portrayal here. We don't even have a human-like figure. There is the hint of a stone face at the bottom, but two serpents coiled around a tree. And this card has been renamed Balance. So quite reminiscent of um, Kundalini, as an energy, as serpents, as masculine, as feminine, balancing these, acknowledging both working in harmony for aspirations for higher purposes and goals. Yeah, don't really need to say too much more about that as a portrayal, and going quite quickly through these. So a really similar-ish to some of the things I've spoken about representation of temperance. Oop, slide into the side a little bit there. I do apologise. Just go with it. This one's from the William Blake Tarot, and this is forgiveness. Again, you have some angelic-like figures. You have one on either side, a masculine and feminine. You have a chalice, and what does the other side look like? An offering of food, and a very Christ-like figure in the middle. Yeah, temperance as forgiveness, to temper one's emotions, I guess, or to extend the gift of forgiveness, and not just to others, but also, I would say, towards ourselves, for things we may feel we might have got wrong or done less than ideal. It's definitely a very fitting and a really nice perspective on temperance. Again, there's many associations to that particular word. As I've said it a lot, I'm just musing on them some myself, to temper something, to be in a temper tantrum. To kind of hold on to emotions, hot and cold, is the process literally where things are tempered in a forge to harden steel. So sometimes I think like aspects of temperance can be seen as being challenged by life or put through these trials to forge one's own strength. And they can be quite extreme processes, leading to various attitudes or beliefs about life and others because of things that happen. But ultimately and hopefully through that we can move into the space of forgiveness, and with that becomes a sense of understanding, of necessity, of journeys, of interactions, of processes we go through to learn things. But quite a difficult one to perhaps easily distill at the time, as we go through life, but definitely something worth musing on and reflecting about. And I think it leads to one's being a lot more open, generous, with others and with self, and interrelationness in the world, and a really cool expression of temperance. And finally, I may have to just alter this a little bit here. Try and get it in here. Finally, we have the William Shakespeare portrayal of temperance. Maybe a little bit fuzzy in places, but it's what it is. It's quite a card. One of my favourites that I've seen from the William Shakespeare Tarot deck. And I won't talk too much at length about it. But you can see these kind of duality aspects expressed quite wonderfully. Sin, virtue, chastity, sexual liberation, excess, even pain, pleasure. I really like it in a sense. It's kind of a meditation on extremes, but interconnectedness between what may be perceived sometimes as poles or opposites or dualities. But understanding that to find self, many beings will travel to various parts of that, those things, those poles, and they may seem extreme to outsiders. They may seem extreme to self when you're in them or in post-reflection. But these are kind of like the ranges of experience of life, of humanness, of being. And with the themes of temperance is that play, is that creativity, is that exploration, experimentation, where we find things out, where we make choices, where we refine our processes and how we are, and what we believe is of value and necessity, and what we have to create with, including ourselves. And that's another part of that as well. Unfortunately, I won't be able to explore as many tarot decks in the future for the last remaining cards, but I will have some. So I'll leave it at that, and yeah, look forward to number 15 next, which is the Devil, but not as bad a card as many may perceive. A really fascinating one, but I'll save that for the next video. Alright, cheers.